views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Well, coming up on this edition of Today's Verdict, as law schools prepare for graduation, it's obviously a tense time for this year's graduates. Jobs in the legal community are tough to come by, and loans have to be paid back. Well, on tonight's show, we sit down with an expert who will give our newly crowned attorneys tips on landing much-needed employment. Although we expect you to study hard for your final exams, you won't want to miss this episode. So stay tuned. Today's Verdict starts right now. Hello, and welcome to Today's Verdict, the live and interactive show that gives you your legal rights and options. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesch. Well, Today's Verdict is always encouraging you to stay connected. Make sure to tweet us at Today's Verdict and hashtag Ask Today's Verdict if you have a question. Also, make sure to like us and follow us on Facebook at Today's Verdict, and check us out at BronxNet.tv/BronxLegal. Don't forget to tweet me at David Lesch and use the hashtag TV Finals Week and TV Postgrad throughout the show to let us know what you think about tonight's show. Well, our next segment, which has been featured before, was so popular with our viewers, we've decided to add it to upcoming shows when possible. Yes, we are back with more legal news via Twitter. We welcome back our interactive segment and renamed it Today's Verdict Twitter Talk. Well, this week, Today's Verdict Twitter Talk discusses the end of the year finals week, a time all students dread. Well, we found a great article that may just help you get through your finals week. Now, although this article is directed towards law school finals, Above the Law legal writer and blogger at Law Prof Blog shares some tips that all students studying for year-end exams can utilize. In 9 mistakes you probably made on your law school final exams, at Law Prof Blog brings us 9 common mistakes students should avoid when tackling the essay portion of their law school final exams. With the professor's blessing, we will share with you these 9 mistakes you probably made last year so that you can avoid making them this year. So pull out your pen and paper and get ready to do what you've done all semester. Take notes. The first mistake many students make on law school exams finals is fairly simple. What you thought you wrote isn't what you wrote. The problem is that students struggle with their inability to communicate their thoughts and answers on paper. For law students, this is especially important, and it translates later in life when you are in a courtroom expressing yourself correctly. It's so important. Which brings us to our second mistake you may have made in the past when taking your law school finals exams: poor structure. What Law Professor Blog means by this is that you've made it impossible to prove and or understand your argument due to poor structure. Make sure your answers coincide with the questions being asked. If not, you leave your professor wondering whether you truly understand the issues that are being tested. The third mistake you probably made on your law school final exam is a tendency to treat your arguments as conclusory. This means there are holes in your argument which leaves room for question. This leads to whys written by the professor all over your exam. In other words, you left out a portion of the argument, as Law Professor Blog simply puts it. Now, the fourth mistake you probably made on your law school final exam is failing to find the key issues. Look deeper into the question. The next and fifth mistake you could easily make on your law school final exam may sound absurd, but it's actually the most common mistake of the 9. Your grammar and spelling must be correct. This may sound ridiculous to point out, but your professors hate when you can't put a simple sentence together or misspell common words. All right, number 6, well, you ran out of time. Now, this mistake is common for all exam takers. Remember to pace yourself. Come up with a strategy that works best for you, and please stick to it. Don't waste valuable test-taking time writing a "have mercy on my exam" paragraph when you can be using that time actually completing the exam. Seventh mistake you probably made on last year's new law school exam: you ignore the facts. This mistake just so happens to be Law Professor Blog's biggest pet peeve when it comes to grading your finals. Do not just recite or regurgitate the rule or fact. You must apply the rule. A client is not going to come down and sit down and say to you, well, what are the facts? I don't really understand. Well, that's not the way it's going to happen. I can tell you this firsthand. Very important. I know your wrists are getting numb, but we are almost finished. The eighth mistake you probably made on your law school final exam is that you do not express confidence in your answer. Be sure of your answer and try to avoid using phrases that make it seem otherwise to your professor. Clearly, obviously, probably, the list goes on and on. Avoid these phrases at all costs. Now, the ninth and final mistake you probably made on your law school final exam is wasting time. Students waste time in many ways while taking their final exams. Do not spend all your time bringing background information that in the end does not help answer the initial question that your professor is asking. Pace yourself. Well, that wraps it for this week's Twitter Talk. We'd like to thank writer and blogger at Law Professor Blog for allowing us to share his article and tips with you. We did want him to join us tonight, but unfortunately he could not make it. He's probably getting ready to grade your exams. But here's a picture of the professor himself. Make sure to follow the professor on Twitter for more legal talk, tips, and stories at Law Professor Blog. That is LAWPROFBLAWG. We have to take a quick break, but don't worry. We'll be back with more of today's verdict right after this. And don't forget to let us know your thoughts on this week's Today's Verdict Twitter Talk with hashtag TV Twitter Talk. Stay tuned.
Hey, I'm Darren Jaime. I'm the host of Wednesdays Open right here on BronxNet Television, Channel 67, and also on Verizon Files, Channel 33. Want to invite you every Wednesday. You get an opportunity to see what's going on in the world of news, current events, debates, public information. That's what happens here on Open every Wednesday. So we invite you to join us right here on BronxNet Television.
Wow, these are really good.
You act surprised. Practice makes perfect.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who don't need perfection. They need you.
I love taking care of my mom. It wasn't easy at first. She learned how to better communicate her needs.
And you learned how to not ignore yours.
I discovered how to make healthier meals.
And I discovered how much I enjoyed them.
Becoming a caregiver is a learning experience for everyone. Find articles, tips, and tools from experts and others who have been in your place. The Caregiving Resource Center at aarp.org/caregiving.
Hey, look, it's those guys.
Let's do those pearly whites, man. Yeah. The boys, check it. Yeah.
Ooh, cute.
Are you good to drive?
I'm fine.
Hey girl, what's up? What's the name? What's good? What's up?
How many did you have?
I should be fine.
You should be.
Sir, go and step out of the vehicle for me.
Yes, sir.
See ya, buddy. Today, Sean's got a hearing. We'll see how it goes. Good luck. So turns out, buzz driving and drunk driving, they're the same thing, and it costs around $10,000. So not worth it.
There's one thing you can never have sex without.
It's not something you buy.
Or something you take.
In fact, there's only one way to get it.
It has to be given to you, freely.
It's consent.
Because sex without it isn't sex.
It's rape. Consent
If you don't get it, you don't get it.
It's on us to stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
All right, welcome back to Today's Verdict. I'm your host, David Lesch. We are always encouraging you to stay connected. Tweet us at Today's Verdict. Well, once finals are over, we can move to our next stressful endeavor, finding a job. But don't worry, we have much needed information that can help in your journey to finding the perfect employment. Joining us today to share his thoughts on the issue of and why it is so difficult to find a job is managing editor of Above the Law Redline, Elie Mystal. Am I saying it the right way?
Elie Mystal.
Elie, you know, I know it. I messed it up so bad. First
Asian,
of all,
it's weird.
you have quite a background, all right? I have to say, let's talk a little bit. How did you get here? I mean, just not how did you get here by train, but how did you get to the point where you have so much history here? Tell us, please.
Well, after law school, I went to work at Debevoise in Plimpton, kind of classic Manhattan white shoe, complex corporate litigation shop, and I hated it. I disliked pretty much every minute that I was a lawyer. Not because of the firm. The firm it's a great firm. I still have friends at the firm.
You realize we're trying to get lawyers jobs here.
Debevoise is a great place to work.
Right. Okay. Wasn't for you, but all right, it was for others.
Yeah, exactly. I'd like to say that it was a great place to work if you like that sort of thing. I was not cut out for it exactly. But luckily I realized that kind of early on in my experience, and I started pretty much 6 months in. I started trying to figure out what I was going to do next. I stayed a little bit longer. I stayed for 2 years because there are bills that must be paid. And once I felt kind of financially, I was going to say financially secure. I should say, once I felt like I wasn't going to be shipped off to Australia in a debtor's prison, I left and I sat on my couch. I played Madden football for a little bit, and then I kind of, once I decided that I wanted to write, I'm lucky to be living in New York, and I kind of sent my resume out to pretty much every media organization in the city. My cover letter was basically, I have a law degree and I'm willing to work for free.
It's funny, and you bring up an interesting point. When we're in law school, we really don't know what we want to do. I think we say we want to be lawyers, and then a lot of times we think, I want to be in the courtroom and law and order. And then when we graduate, it's not really what you think it's going to be. Am I correct?
Exactly. I mean, people, you get very kind of a tunnel mentality because part of the process of getting yourself into law school, getting through law school, passing the bar, it requires a lot of serious focus and kind of put your head down and get your work done.
Absolutely.
Really, it was only when I quit that it really occurred to me that, wow, I can do anything. Right? And I think that even for people who like the law, sometimes they get shuffled into practice areas that they don't particularly like, fields of law that don't particularly suit them.
Yes.
Because law school doesn't really teach us to specialize, right? We think that we're learning to specialize when we learn different kinds of law. We think that we're specializing in torts, or we think we're specializing in M&A. But the practitioner specialization has a lot more to do with whether or not you're going to be a courtroom lawyer, whether or not you're going to be a service partner, whether or not you're going to be do appellate work. Maybe your best legal skill is kind of sitting in a library and researching and not interfacing with clients. And there are places that you can do that better and places that don't respect that.
I always found the internship was so important in law school. When I interned for Corporation Counsel, I got to see what it was like working for the city. So many other people, one of my friends, he went to work for aviation. He ended up staying there. It's like you get to try a little bit of everything, but it's not till you're out there that and you're working with different people, and sometimes you get that job that you really want, and it's not the right job for you, and it must be very disconcerting.
I tell a story. So when I was at Debevoise, they were very good with pro bono work, and once I kind of realized I didn't like complex corp, I did a lot of pro bono until I really had real people with real problems who were desperately counting on me to make them right, and that turned out I didn't have the stomach for that at all.
You did not?
Did not.
Because most people would want to do something like that.
Oh, no. Don't put me in Rikers. I have no business.
No, it's not, well, you weren't comfortable with that.
Exactly. And who would have known that unless you kind of went through and actually tried?
And now, what do you think? Do you think people have to go through 1, 2, 3 jobs? How many jobs do you think why somebody finally says to yourself, you know what, I'm not a litigator, I don't have the stomach for it. Contracts is really not for me. I can't. It's just too boring. How many do you go through before you finally realize what works and what doesn't?
In this economy, if you can get 3 jobs, kudos to you. You did something right. I would imagine that, especially given the job market, and for most people, if they find a job, they're kind of married to that until they can spin off from that opportunity to another one.
And to be fair, really, it's not just law. It's just not those in the law profession. It's really anybody who graduates college or a lot of business schools. My brother went to Wharton. You know, a lot of guys that come out, you don't just pick the job you want anymore. You go where you think you want it. You go where you want it, and you do the best you can.
Right.
But you're here to talk a little bit about getting jobs for law grads, and let's talk about the first one. First of all, why is it still so hard for these attorneys who spent 4 years in college, 3 years at some very good law schools, graduate, pass the bar, and they're really just almost begging, please, somebody hire me.
We've gone through a major market correction in the legal employment market. And so this is really the first year that we're starting to see numbers stabilize. And by stabilize, all I mean is that we're the percentage of law grads ending up in full-time bar passage required legal jobs is finally not still going down. We've plateaued. But the level that we've plateaued at is, you know, fundamentally much lower than the level it was in 2007 or 2006 before Lehman collapsed.
And by the way, graduates were angry about that. Very angry that they're spending all this money for these law schools, and unless they're in the top, you know, the top 10 law school or top 5% of their class of whatever law school, it's not, they don't. It's like, wait a second. My mom wanted me to become a lawyer. I became a lawyer, and I'm not getting a job. And my friends who didn't want to do this for a living and are doing something else, school teachers, whatever, they're making more money than I am, and they're enjoying themselves more than I am.
It's really challenging. I mean, I talk to law students all the time, and they'll talk about schools, and they'll say, "Well, I'll be good if I go to this school and finish in the top 10%." And I say, "Yes," and 90% of your classmates think that too, and will be wrong. So it's really challenging out there. Right now, we fundamentally still have an oversupply of lawyers and an undersupply of jobs. Now, when I say that, I want to be very nuanced with it, because almost obviously, there is a huge need for lawyers who can service low-income clients. In many parts of this country, in many parts of this city, we do have a service problem where we're not delivering legal services to people who need it most.
Well, give me an example. Are you talking about like landlord-tenant stuff? Like, what kind of, what do you mean?
Landlord-tenant stuff is a great example, right? Where low-income people are being pushed out of there. You know, go to Williamsburg right now. Go to East New York right now. You will find some people who need some lawyer help to try to stop stop from getting gentrified out of homes that they own. Or homes
or legal aid. I'm sure it can't take on every criminal defendant if you do criminal work.
So there is a need for lawyers out there, but there's a need for lawyers who can service very low income clients who can't necessarily pay high legal bills. The people coming out of law school right now, they're saddled with so much debt that they're not really able to take on that work. So you have a lot of people right now, for instance, who can make more money being a contract attorney at a major law firm. So just being kind of a straight document man-hour monkey at a top law firm at at a really good hourly rate than they can learning how to get clients together and build a practice that way.
Now,
to say nothing of the fact that very few law schools are doing a good job of providing graduates with the skills to even know how to get clients to start their own practice when they get out of school. You know, you're graduating people who would make excellent appellate court judges, but not necessarily that able to build a practice.
I have some pretty strong questions for you, but it's that time again. Time for another break. But don't worry, we will be right back after this. And don't forget to tweet us at Today's Verdict and use hashtag TV Postgrad or TV Finals Week and tell us your thoughts on tonight's episodes. Stay back. Stay with us.
There's a shelter pet who wants to meet you. Meet one today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org. Adopt.
Did you know kids who play outdoors have healthier lungs?
Totally.
I did. Did you know that boys that play with dolls make better husbands?
My son has lots of dolls. But did you know terry cloth diapers breathe better?
I did.
It's totally true.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know that strollers have the right of way on the sidewalk?
Yes.
Yep, I did. Did you guys
Did you know that kids who eat breakfast have higher GPAs?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. That's actually what I was going to say.
Did you know babies should never touch silver? It's really bad for them.
I knew that.
Did you guys know that statistically friendly kids have more friends?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's obvious.
Did you know most people think they're using the right car seat for their kid, but they're not?
Parents who really know it all know for sure that their child is in the right seat at the right age and size. Visit safercar.gov/the right seat to make sure your child is protected.
I'm putting that on my blog.
I just put it in mine.
Welcome back. We're continuing our discussion with Ellie Mistal. Ellie, talk a little bit about law schools. I don't know how much they should be held responsible for the fact that their graduates are not able to find positions. Are they overpromising? I know law schools that I'm familiar with have been cutting pay for some of their professors in terms of tenure, getting the monies back to incoming students, making sure that their class is the best and the brightest. Are they can you hold them responsible for some of the things that are happening with their graduates not able to get jobs?
Yeah, I tend to. I tend to place a lot of blame on their doorstep, and I think that the easiest way to kind of get into that door for me is cost. What we have is a lot of law schools that are charging too much, and even when they're having generous financial aid packages, the debt on top of that students are graduating with is too much. What we saw during the recession is that law school tuition remained flat or even went up a little bit. It turned out that tuition was the only recession-proof economic indicator, right? So while I think now at some law schools, in some ways, there is increased price sensitivity, you still have a real, in that middle tier law school, you still have a real sense of trying to put butts in seats and trying to make sure that people are paying attention.
And how do those middle tier law schools do that? Do they network with their own alumni to try and get the jobs there that way? Internships? Because not everyone's going to be in the top 15, 20% of a class. How do you move those students that are in the half of the class, or even the bottom half? How do you get them jobs?
It's really difficult, but it starts with a strong commitment from the law schools to their career services office. In some law schools, and it varies greatly, so it would be useless for me to pick one as an example. But in some law schools, career services officers are kind of long-term employees that have more in common with kind of clerical staff than they do with like hardcore kind of eat what you kill recruiters, which is what law schools need. If you think about any lawyer at a top firm, their phone is ringing off the hook with recruiters trying to what we need is to get those guys stop working for the private companies and get them into the law schools, because it's that level of like hardcore networking and relationship building that every law school needs more of. And some of that, some of that is on the students as well.
Okay.
If you're a law student and and your 3L year is the first time that you show up to your career services office, that's too late.
Yeah.
That's just too late.
So when should
1L year. You go to the registrar, sign up for your classes, then take your proposed class list to the career services officer and says, does this make sense to you? Right. Like, you should be there 1L year.
All right, well, let's talk about the law firms themselves now, because obviously there has to be some way we can get the law firms to start hiring some more of the attorneys, but for whatever, there's some obvious reasons that they're not hiring the graduates. Am I correct?
There are. I mean, one of the big ones, right, is lateral recruiting is through the roof. So while law firms have kind of restricted and scaled back on their entry-level hiring, if you kind of got in and you made it through those first 3, 4, 5 years to the point where you really are a mid-level experienced attorney, man, your phone is ringing off the hook. Right. So a lot of times the firms will, and we had an article about this from one of our columnists on Above the Law about this. A lot of times firms will be posting jobs they don't really want to fill with new talent. They have a specific kind of target in mind at somebody else's firm.
Right.
They're trying to
because they don't want
to
train somebody new. It takes time to train somebody.
Yeah. And the clients don't want, and in fairness to the firms, the clients don't want to pay for your law firm to train new people. Right. They want the big guns.
What about the outsourcing? Did law schools, law firms outsource as well?
They're doing a lot of outsourcing. They're doing a lot of insourcing, right?
What is insourcing?
So insourcing is what I referenced them earlier, the contract attorneys, right? So instead of having all your documents sent to a foreign country or sent to Wheeling, West Virginia has become a big outsourcing hub for legal work. You just hire a bunch of contract attorneys. Usually these people have law nowadays, not in my day, they didn't. They were paralegals, but nowadays they usually have law degrees.
Okay.
You hire them for $35 an hour, $45 an hour to just churn through what used to be an entry-level associate's job. In a way, if you can be an entry-level associate now, things are a little bit better for you because you're being deployed on higher-end legal work than straight kind of document review, privilege law, that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff now they realize they can do that more efficiently at the contract attorney level, but it means that they only have to hire, even a huge law firm will only have to hire a summer class of 25 as opposed to 105.
Right.
Those are jobs that aren't coming back.
Now, you're familiar with the rankings, obviously, right? You work with the rankings. Tell us how.
Yeah, so Love the Law just released our 2016 top 50 law school rankings.
Okay.
We only rank the top 50, we rank all the schools, but we only publish the top 50 because we are trying to really get into schools that kind of have a national pull. And the key thing about our rankings as opposed to other law school rankings out there is that we're entirely outcome focused. So we don't care about the law school, the entry level LSAT score. We don't care about the GPA. We don't care about how many professors have how many books and how many libraries, right? We're just kind of really focused on what people are doing after they graduate. Are they getting jobs? How much debt do they have? What's one of the new ratios we have this year is your debt to salary ratio. So like if you're graduating with more debt than your starting salary is for your first job, right. A lot of financial advisors say that's a bad thing. BYU, by the way, was the top. It had a 1.7 debt to salary ratio. Wow. So they were kicking it. And so we try to look at schools from the perspective of who's doing best by their
that's a smart way to do it. Listen, we don't have much time. Final tips. Someone's watching right now. They're looking for a job. They're sweating it out. They got to take the bar exam. Maybe they're looking to line something up. Give some advice.
Yeah, I don't want to use the evil networking word because everybody's just go network. But obviously that's the right answer. Assuming that you've already done everything you can in the networking field, don't just look for a legal job. Look for a job.
Get a job.
Look for a job and then see if in the course of that employment you can show off your legal skills to that employer because almost every employer needs a lawyer whether they admit it or not.
Now that's good advice. But unfortunately, that's all the time we have for tonight. I'd like to thank our guests for joining us and of course you, the viewers, for watching. If you missed any part of today's show, be sure to check us out at www.bronxnet.tv. Also remember, if there is a legal issue or topic you'd like to see on a future edition of Today's Verdict, feel free to contact me at davidlesch@bronxnet.org or tweet us at Today's Verdict and make sure you hashtag Ask Today's Verdict. For myself and all of us at Today's Verdict, good luck to all students who are taking finals this weekend. Lastly, always remember, know your rights, know your issues, reach a verdict. I'm David Lesch, and we will see you again in 2 weeks with an all-new Today's Verdict next time. See you later.